Hello, I'm Sandeep Tyagi, and you're watching The Brand Called You. Today, the brand we are talking to is Rohit Kapoor. Rohit was born and educated in India. He went to the most prestigious of schools, starting with the Doon School, IIT Delhi, and then IIM Ahmedabad. He's the vice chairman and CEO of EXL Service, a NASDAQ listed public company, which is one of the most innovative and successful operations outsourcing and analytics companies in the world. So, welcome to the show, Rohit.
Thanks for having me, Sandeep. It's a pleasure to be here.
Rohit, you're the CEO of EXL Service, 32,600 plus people. I don't know about Antarctica, but every other continent is definitely covered. Almost $1 billion in revenue and $2.5 billion in market cap. My question is, when you were 7 years old, you know how everybody does pretend play. I can imagine you never thought that this is the job you'd be doing, but what did you pretend to be when you were pretend playing as a kid?
Yeah, so look, in my childhood, this would never have been in the scope of my ambitions. In my ambition, it would have been how to go and work in a job, basically have a steady pay income, and lead the kind of lifestyle that I saw my father and my parents lead. My father used to be in the army, and it was a very relaxed, very easy lifestyle which existed. And I really didn't think much about it at that point of time.
So were you're a first generation entrepreneur? The family was in services?
Yes, absolutely. So my father was in the army. My mother was a school teacher. And there's nobody in our family or even close family which really had started any kind of a business. And everything was centered around being a professional services employee.
When you started, no journey in a startup is a straight line up. Were there times when you look back, or maybe even more interestingly, your father or mother looked back and said, what the heck are you doing? This is not the right path for you.
Yeah, so, when I decided to set up EXL and, get working on this and leave my job in the banking world, that was a big decision. I think it took, a long period of time for me to convince, my wife Shikha, for me to convince my mother. But the most difficult was convincing my mother-in-law because, here I was working with Deutsche Bank, just starting to kind of break out in terms of my corporate career. And I was deciding to throw up my job and get started on a startup company called EXL, which nobody had heard of. And I had to answer the question as to why would I throw up such a good job and take the risk and get into, a completely new field. And, I think I did convince her because without her blessing, I wouldn't have started, EXL. And she did, say, all right, why don't you try it out for a bit? And if it doesn't work, why don't you come back, into the banking world?
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. Without that support, and there is no way without peace at that front that you could take on something like this. But was the journey perilous at any point? Were you at some point thinking this may not work out? And what was your emotional state when you went through the lows?
So yes, we went through several ups and downs. So we started the company at the height of the dot-com boom, which was in 1999. Everybody was starting up, a dot-com company at that point of time, and it was all about the number of clicks and the number of people that were logging onto the websites. We decided to set up a bricks and mortar company, which basically would handle email processing for these internet startup companies. And our model was very simple. It used to cost $3 to process an email in the US. We figured out that we could process an email in India for $1. So we'd offer it to the customer at $2 per email. The client would be very happy. We would make boatloads of money, and we should be sitting on the beach pretty soon thereafter. But as you know, in 2000, the dot-com crash took place and all the internet companies and all the valuations collapsed. And we found that the pricing on email collapsed from $2 an email to a few cents per email. And that's when we realized that this was a highly commoditized service offering, which anybody with a laptop anywhere in the world could offer. And whoever wanted to make a few cents could provide this service. So that's when we ran from email processing and started to do work pretty much around domain-specific back office and transaction processing work. And so that was our first, downturn that we had to kind of deal with in a very short period of time and see margins compress completely and just evaporate. We had another incident where, 2.5 years into our startup organization, we got acquired. We got acquired by Conseco, which was an insurance company in the Midwest, and they bought us for $50 million. The only problem was that they bought us for stock, and it was a 100% stock deal, and the stock was restricted and you couldn't sell the stock. And the month that Conseco completed the acquisition, they also announced their second quarter results, and they took a charge of $500 million. And it became very clear that Conseco would actually be filing for bankruptcy pretty soon. So there we were holding a lot of value in paper money, but Conseco was, going under, and we were going to get dragged along with it. So at these types of moments, you step back and you reflect in terms of what's going on and what can you do about it. And you really have to rely on your instinct and your gut to help you through this kind of a crisis and find a pathway forward. So just like we shifted out of email processing into domain-specific operations management and BPO, with Conseco, we got, a new financial sponsor. We actually bought the company out of Conseco 2 weeks prior to Conseco filing for bankruptcy. And we sort of extricated ourselves and started to build up our enterprise once again. So a number of ups and downs, and yes, we've got many scars to share stories with you.
So a few times you have packed your bags to the beach, but then had to unpack it, huh?
Yes, the journey to the beach never really materialized, and here I am still working, and it's been 21 years, and I haven't made it to the beach so far.
But at this point, it's obviously a large company, very successful. At what point did you look back, or more importantly, you were able to sit across your mother-in-law and say, look, looks like it's been worthwhile, this journey? What was a specific instance, moment, experience that made it worthwhile?
So I would say that, at the point of time when we went public, which was in 2006, so we had been in existence for about 7 years at that point of time. We went public in 2006. We had Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, Merrill Lynch, and Thomas Weisel, four of the most reputable investment banks that were clamoring for our business and that took us public. Our issue was oversubscribed before we began the roadshow, and the stock popped up on the opening, and that's when we had some credibility and some respect in the marketplace, because everybody kind of wanted to buy into that story. So that's the time I could go to my mother-in-law and say, here is not only me that's telling you that we've been successful in what we tried to do, but here's the marketplace and a number of people who will tell you that they value what has been built so far.
I agree. That picture in Times Square with that background is a pretty good feeling. You do feel you're in the center of the universe at that moment. One thing I've admired about EXL is its ability to retain its senior talent. As I was browsing through your management team a couple of days back, I noticed several names and faces which I know they've been there since, if not inception, pretty close. What's the secret? Do you all think alike? What makes you guys keep going together?
So, Sandeep, I think, this is a topic that I reflect upon quite often. And I think the fact that we went through a number of situations which were challenging situations and we dealt with it together. So, just like the Conseco debacle that we went through, we had other situations where we had, let's say, a major client leave us, and then there was a big drop in our revenue and in our profitability. So we've been through a couple of these near-death experiences in our professional lives, and every time, I think we've all hunkered down. We all have had implicit trust in each other, and we've come out of it much, much stronger on the other side. So, and every time we go through this kind of an immersion process, I feel we get closer together, and when we come up, much stronger together. Even right now, for example, going through the COVID pandemic, in March and April, we didn't really know what was going to happen to our business. We went into this crisis. We had never had an operating model where our employees could work from home. None of them were enabled for that. But yet we went through this because all of us were there together, and because all of us were collectively making sacrifices, making changes, and working together. I think today we have emerged, in October, where we can see visibility of growth and development of our business again. So I just think some of these experiences really bring you together and actually make you want to work together and continue to work in terms of building the organization.
But realistically, Rohit, every company goes through tough times, but they don't stay together. So there is something else here that's going on. Don't you find that people would get into intramurals, as it's called, or somebody would start vying for role that's already occupied and get very antsy about not getting it? This situation happens all the time, and the longer a team stays together, I think more credible it is that there is something which is not just chance. So I guess, look, shared experiences create bonds, but there must be something else. Which do you consciously try to do something to imbibe a culture that will stick together?
So I think, the other thing is probably the kind of shared values that all of us have, and the shared aspirations and ambitions that we have of the marketplace, of what we can do with our business, and how we want to build and grow our business. So I think there's a lot of common thinking out there in terms of shared values. So we truly hold the customer as being the most important. And for us, it's all about how can we make our clients successful. And if we do make our clients successful, we will be successful. It's all about integrity and respect for the individual. And that is fundamental and core. And we will never really sacrifice on those values and those principles. So I think some of these common values that we share, that perhaps also ties us together and makes it a much more lasting enterprise where everybody finds great satisfaction in being together as opposed to branching out.
That and great offsites. Okay. Well, you talked about COVID and how things are going, and that's where I want to take this conversation next. Of course, you run a large organization which does work for thousands of companies all over the world, all kinds of different work. I would love to hear your view on what is the impact with this forced experiment that we have been going through, where people are working not just from a different country, but from their homes, literally. How would this change work going forward?
Yeah, I call this the biggest design thinking social experiment that was forced upon us with no notice. And look, we all know that in the second week and the third week of March, as the economies kind of shut down, We all were forced in terms of changing our business model. For us, I think it was even more dramatic because none of our clients allowed us to work from home. The regulatory environment did not give us permission and approval to work from home previously. Our employees didn't have the infrastructure to be able to work from home. And everything that we had was in our delivery service offices, which all had desktops, but no laptops. So, transporting equipment was not easy either. But it really was the grit, determination, and the human ingenuity of our team that basically overnight shifted from a work from office to a work from home model. And then within a couple of weeks, we had all of our operations fully stabilized where everybody was working from home and we were operating as if nothing had happened. The regulators changed the laws, our clients gave us permission, our employees stepped forward, and we provided all the resources to be able to work from home. So that, worked out well. Today, almost about 97% of the work that we are doing is being done by employees working from the safety of their homes. It's a big shift. It is a big shift in terms of everybody working from office to everybody working from home. And at first, we were really concerned about it as to how this might shape up. What would happen to productivity? What would happen to service levels? What would happen to the motivation levels of our employees? How long can you sustain this for? Can you be creative and innovative in this kind of an environment? And we've been really, really pleasantly shocked and surprised. Our employee satisfaction scores have shot up. And our employees love it because they don't need to spend 1.5 to 2 hours traveling each way to office, and they can work from home. So their work-life balance has become a lot better. The productivity is actually much better than while working from the office. So we don't have much of absenteeism and much of people absconding from work, and that's been really, really very powerful. The communication has been seamless. In fact, the level of communication has stepped up, in this kind of an environment. I was really concerned about creativity, innovation, and thinking about new ways of being able to solve for customer problems. That's actually not been a challenge, and our employees are coming up with more and more ideas for us to implement and be able to get more transformation, more change, and better ways of doing things. We also thought we may not be able to win new customers. We might just only be able to grow our business with existing clients, because if you haven't met anybody previously, how do you convince them to do work with you? Well, that's turned out to be completely false, because we've signed up many, many new customers. And just like this conversation that I'm having with you, we've had many virtual conversations with new clients, and that's worked really well.
So this is, sorry to jump in here, but this is something that obviously a lot of CEOs are thinking about. And clearly there are two streams emerging. There is, I guess, broadly like a Facebook model, which says this is temporary. We are all going to be back working from a central office, and they are buying more real estate or leasing more real estate all the time. And then there are others, maybe Google or some others, who have come out and said this is more permanent. Which view do you subscribe to? Is it permanent or is it temporary and will go away as the virus gets more under control?
So Sandeep, our view is that it will be somewhere in the middle as a hybrid. What that really means is we need to have the flexibility to be able to work from home, but we also have to have the flexibility to bring our employees to the office and get people together in order to be able to have spontaneity of communication, expand their network, allow them to have more open thinking, and be able to make sure that the cultural values of the company are sustained. But we think perhaps going forward, almost 50% of the work can and will be done on a permanent basis on a work from home business model if the regulators allow it and if our clients allow it. our employees certainly would be willing to embrace that. So if we have 50% of the work being done from home, but we will need to bring our employees together because there are a couple of challenges from the 100% work from home model. The challenges are you don't have spontaneity of communication. So all conversations are pre-planned. There are very specific agendas, and it's on a track which is very well defined. And as long as it's defined, it's a great conversation. But that water cooler conversation or just bumping into somebody in the hallway and having a dialogue where without any agenda, that obviously does not take place. And I think that is essential. It's really essential because some of the brightest ideas get sparked out from those conversations. I think,
and on the other side, are people complaining that they are tired of doing dishes at home, or they are missing having a beer in the evening with their friends?
Yes, I think there are people who would say that they miss traveling and they would like to travel. There are people who would say they would like to come to the office and have a social interaction with other people around them. There are people who would say, yes, I want to get away from home because I've been doing this now for 7 months and I need a break, from this. So absolutely, I think, the human beings always want a change of environment and need a social interaction. And that's going to continue to stay. So even for all of us, we want to go out to a restaurant or we want to go out to a different place. And that's something which I think will continue to remain.
But not more than 50% is what I hear you saying. That need would be met with by maybe somewhere around 50%, give or take.
Yes. So 50% of the workforce would be from home. We would bring them in periodically to be able to have these types of conversations, give them the release and give them a viewpoint of a different environment, and then go right back to that. So I think that kind of a model will work well.
Do you see a difference with the size and quality of residential infrastructure, say in a country like US versus a country like India or Philippines? Would that be different?
Yes, it is definitely very different. It's a lot easier in the US. The workspace at home is much better infrastructure, much more well defined. In India or in the Philippines, there is a lot of sharing of residential accommodation, and there isn't really a space which can be made available for working effectively. So that infrastructure will need to get created, will need to be funded, and on a long-term basis, that is very important. The ergonomics of working from home, I think that's very important as well. So having the right kind of equipment, right kind of table, chair, technology, communication bandwidth, access, that's going to be really, really important. And when somebody comes to work, everybody has the same work environment. But when people are working from home, it's very different, and there is an impinging on their lifestyle by other family members. And there's also a very wide variety of home workspace. So actually, that is a critical factor that we all need to be more sensitive about and be able to deal with, on a go-forward basis.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about something that you are, I believe, even more passionate about than how workspaces would change, and that's golf. So tell me, would you ever let a friend pick up the ball and not count a stroke?
Probably not. But if it's you, maybe I'll let you pick up your ball. But no, golf is definitely a big passion of mine, and there is a competitive element out there that needs to be kind of adhered to.
So how is it going? Is it something possible? Well, fortunately, it's outdoors. Has that been? Are you playing well? What kind of a score are you shooting these days?
Well, golf is one of those sports that has benefited with the pandemic because it's outdoors. You can go out and play, and if you're working from home and your golf course is close by, then you can finish work and go out and play, late evenings. So actually, I played more golf this year than I would have in any other year. I've played more golf with my son, who I really enjoy playing golf with, and it's just been fantastic. And yeah, I think if you play more, your golf game improves. So, I think my golf game has improved, though I must say I haven't really had any spectacular games, and all of my hole-in-ones are from previous times when I wasn't playing so much of golf at that time.
Okay. Well, talking about your son, very impressive achievements by both your children who have gone to equally prestigious, if not more prestigious schools as you did, to Princeton and Harvard. How did you guys manage that with a kind of a travel schedule? Any learnings on parenting?
Well, I'll tell you the credit on that really goes to my wife, Shikha, who kind of spent all of her waking hours with the kids and helping them, with their studying, with their school activities, with their extracurricular activities, with all of their interests, and kind of providing the right kind of atmosphere for helping them kind of find their own passion and their own dream. But yeah, I do have a few parenting tips. So number one is, we did take a number of family vacations together, which weren't always coinciding with the school holidays. So we would pull out our kids from school many times when they were young, and we would go for a break. And the assumption was that they would learn a lot more through their experiences on vacation, going to India or Europe or wherever we were going, by exploring the world, as opposed to in the classroom and being there and learning out there. They could always catch up on what was being taught in the classroom, but the experience that they would get in terms of traveling and seeing different societies, different cultures, different places, that would be great. So I think that particularly in the early years is a great way to kind of educate your kids in a much more broader framework. And it sort of worked, for us.
Well said. Let's talk about you and your learning. Tell us about an aha moment where you learned something or realized something new.
A couple of things. One, I was on the board of CA Technologies, and I was on that board for about 7 years. And I got to see a technology company operate at size and scale. And one of the aha moments for me was that when you go from, $1 million of revenue to $100 million of revenue to $1 billion of revenue to $5 billion of revenue, you have to change the way in which you operate. At $1 million revenue, you are the salesperson, you are the execution person, you do everything that you have to do yourself. At 100 million, you've got a team of people, but you are leading and you are in the trenches and you are kind of getting things done. But when you get to 5 billion, there is no way a CEO can actually do everything. And it's much, much more important that you pick the right team and you have the right individuals do the right work in order to be able to extend your capacity and be able to manage an enterprise of that size and scale. So I think for me, that learning was a big aha moment in terms of seeing what kind of a transition needs to make place. You don't need to work harder. You don't need to be more intelligent to run a bigger company. You just need to work much more differently. And that was, I think something which I learned, and hopefully as we continue to build and grow EXL, I'll be deploying that strategy.
And it'll be interesting for you and your team, because earlier in the talk we talked about how does the same team go from when you started to when they are running a big company. Not just the CEO, but the team also needs to evolve.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to watching that and learning from it. But tell me, what's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear. I don't know. I don't tend to fear or worry. I tend to think about more about opportunities and what to do. And I guess in that respect, you would say my biggest fear would be seeing a huge opportunity and not being able to fully realize the dream and the opportunity that exists out there. And, you know, I think that there's a lot that one can do. And, this country is a phenomenal place. This, we have a huge opportunity to do a lot more. And, I think it'll be a shame if we don't accomplish, what our true potential is.
Okay. Well, the next section is few quick questions. No need or time to think. Whatever pops in your head, we'll go with that. Pancake or paratha?
Paratha, for sure.
Which movie have you watched more than 5 times?
Well, maybe
given the flights
Catch
you
Me
take,
If You
I'm
Can.
sure you have watched some movie more than 5 times.
Catch Me If You Can.
What's your favorite office to visit?
Cape Town, South Africa.
Who do you think is the most beautiful actress?
Wow. One point of
That's
time,
not the
it was
first
Julia
person that's
Roberts.
coming to your mind, Rohit. You got to go faster.
All right, Julia Roberts.
All right. Thank you for playing along, Rohit. Final question. How would you describe the brand called Rohit Kapoor in as few words as possible?
I think some of the words that come to my mind on that would be, and I hope it, truly reflects who I am, is humility. And I think about humility being a key quality and something which allows you to remain open to getting input from the outside, build and grow, and continue to march forward. I would think about a highly intellectually curious person, and that's something which is important to me because I like to understand how and why things work in a particular way and how they might evolve, and continue to learn and continue to remain curious as such. I guess probably given what I have done over the last 21 years, being a self-starter and an entrepreneur is probably part of that equation. And there are many things which I would have done to get started. So I think starting something new and being engaged there, that would be another thing. So probably, these would be a few things which might describe me a bit.
Humble, entrepreneurial, curious, and fearless. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Rohit Kapoor. Thank you so much for spending the time with us, Rohit.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.